land of French pig farming, a very warm welcome to environment this week. We're in Brittany, a region that represents 50% of the country's pigs, 40% of its poultry and 20% of its milk production. But these huge agricultural figures come with a cost. Some might say a deadly cost if it's true that the toxic green algae piling on nearby beaches is a direct consequence of lax farming practices. Coming up, the green algae blame game. Can farmers do more to reduce the noxious sludge that's overwhelming Brittany's shallow bays and supposedly killing dozens of wild boars? Next, New Zealand lifts a ban on aquaculture, spurring criticism that waste from new fish farms will spoil an idyllic paradise. And finally, reversing the effects of blast fishing, we head to Indonesia, where locals have built artificial coral reefs to preserve their precious marine life. This is one of several thousand pig farms in the region, most of which use nitrogen-based fertiliser to grow the crops that feed these animals. While farmers are under strict regulations to monitor their use of this fertiliser, environmentalists say excessive use has led to the algae that is proliferating across Brittany's coast. At any one time, Guy Cobal raises around 350 pigs. He feeds them, fattens them and collects their waste in this concrete tank. Tons of manure fertiliser stored in the open air. It's certainly natural, but also contains high levels of nitrogen, meaning its use must be regulated.
We're limited to 140 units of nitrogen per hectare. You're entitled to 100 units of organic nitrogen, which is the nitrogen in animals, and 40 units of mineral nitrogen.
30 years ago, when Guy Cobal took over the property, he used all sorts of fertilisers without restraint. Today, he believes 95% of Brittany's farmers have changed their ways, and any move to strengthen restrictions would make their livelihood unviable.
I don't think we can go any further. Today we're on the basis of 100 to 160 units. We can't go lower because economically we won't survive. There will come a time when if the nitrogen levels fall too low, we won't produce enough.
Nitrogen fertiliser is rich in nitrates that are essential for growing grain and fodder. But when used in large quantities, the crops can no longer absorb the nutrients and the soil becomes saturated. The excess nitrates run off into the groundwater and river systems before entering the sea. It's here at the end of the chain that they accumulate, allowing green algae to thrive. In Brittany, the problem has become an annual occurrence. Each summer, thousands of tonnes of the rotting seaweed proliferates along the coast. This year drew extra attention when 36 wild boars were found dead in July.
It appears that the hydrogen sulfide produced by the decomposition of these green algae buried in the mud is behind these deaths.
Since the incident at Morieux, the beach has been closed to the public. It's been a rallying point for environmentalists like Dominique, who is pushing for a radical overhaul of farming practices.
One of the
problems in Brittany is that there's too much livestock within a small area. It's more than the ground can handle. So what we'd like is for farmers to earn a better living than they do right now. Perhaps they could create a special certification for products which would allow them to charge more and thereby reduce the concentration of farming in the region.
Farmers versus ecologists, the battle is not new, but opinions are still divided 40 years after Brittany first began its crusade against the toxic green tides. Here in Brittany, it's agriculture that's being accused of damaging the environment, but it's not the only type of farming that's threatening our ecosystem. This year, a ban on fish farming or aquaculture was lifted in New Zealand, and locals say waste from the new industry will create an ecological time bomb.
Every year, thousands of people flock to New Zealand to marvel at the country's rugged coastlines, beautiful scenery, and rich sea life. But now some tour guides fear a change in the law could ruin all that. Peter Beach operates a boat tour around the Marlborough Sounds in the South Island. He believes the government's decision to expand aquaculture in the area will destroy the ecosystem.
It has the potential to turn our beautiful sounds into one great big fish farming area.
Under changes to the law, preference will be given to farm an area if it's proven suitable. The government sees aquaculture as a key part of its economic growth and has set a target for the industry to earn $1 billion a year by 2025, triple the current amount. But ecologists say while marine farms alleviate pressure on wild fish stocks, they also pollute the ocean and can often spread diseases. Fish farming companies have already started expansion plans, but have sought to reassure opponents that aquaculture can be environmentally developed.
What we want to do is make sure there's sustainable growth. There's recently been a study completed in the Marlborough Sounds to look at what the carrying capacity is, how many fish farms can it sustainably support.
But there's also fears that if aquaculture is stepped up in the area, it will attract foreign companies, which may be less scrupulous about protecting the environment. And locals worry that their concerns won't be heard as the government pushes ahead with its national drive to expand the industry.
Fishing on a much smaller scale can also cause serious harm. In Indonesia, a practice known as blast fishing has been wiping out fish populations. It's also destroying coral reefs, which is why locals have decided to build their own artificial ones.
These waters off northeastern Indonesia are a paradise for divers and deep-sea enthusiasts, but their most vital asset, coral, has fallen prey to unsustainable practices. Blast fishing using explosives by local fishermen has eaten away at the coral reefs, threatening the local tourist trade, which is heavily reliant on the region's marine life. Now a group of conservationists has teamed up with villagers to replace the corals using man-made concrete reefs. The frames are made with bamboo, which is abundant in the vicinity.
If we use iron to make these reefs, the villagers will have to go to the city to find them. But if we use bamboo, the villagers can just use existing resources in the villages.
Since the programme was started in April this year, more than 5 hectares of replacement reef have been laid, and vegetation is already beginning to grow back on the concrete. For villagers, it's a lifeline.
The coral reefs around these waters have been damaged, but the villagers around here want to grow them back. We want to bring back the coral reefs and breed fish in these waters again.
The district government is backing the initiative with funding and training. Conservationists wanted to mark the beginning of a new era for the region's ecosystem.
We hope that the local villagers will be more aware and take care of the environment, especially the waters around the Tumpan village.
And with fish set to return to the waters, the local fishermen stand to benefit too.
That brings us to the end of Environment this week. It's time to leave Brittany, the agricultural powerhouse, and we look forward to seeing you here on France 24 next week.